So continuing from the previous video where I last left off, I kind of had to cut it short because I had a phone call incoming. But like I was saying, this is, my digital diary, so there's no filter for anything that I say, and I hope that some of the stuff in my digital diary can help other people who may have been in a similar situation that I was. This is going to be a more, serious topic sort of video. So if people are like uncomfortable with the topic of sexual assault or just the topic of sex in general, that maybe not the video for you. But it's a very real part of my life and a very real part of the lives of a lot of people, because it's something that happens to a lot of people. Now, when I was 8 years old, I was at my grandmother's house and I was sexually assaulted by my 13-year-old cousin. And it may not seem like in the beginning that sorry. It may not seem like at the beginning that it affected me too much, because I kind of went about my childhood relatively normally, but looking back at it and thinking about it, I was definitely more interested in sex far earlier than any child should be. And it kind of, the situation caused me a lot of issues just with like my personality, the way I interact with people, all that stuff. It caused a lot of problems for me. And to some degree, it still does. It's not something anyone can forget about when it happens to them. So I dealt with a lot of anger management issues as a kid, and I had a lot of trust issues, and I started to develop this hatred for women because I didn't feel safe in my own body, and it made me upset and jealous towards women that were. And it caused me to be very negative towards myself and towards women. I was very sexist towards other women. And I will admit that it wasn't something that I wanted to be. I didn't want to be a woman because I wasn't comfortable in my own body. I didn't feel safe in my own body. I didn't feel like I had rights. I didn't feel like I was allowed to have a personality. And I was jealous because other women were skinny and had long hair and wore makeup and were girly and wore skirts and dresses and had boyfriends. And from my perspective, they were perfect, and I wasn't. I was the furthest thing from a girl, from my own perspective. Fat, short hair, hated makeup. Because of my autism, I just don't like the way makeup feels on my face. And, I hated the color pink and purple and anything feminine. I hated skirts and dresses. I wore baggy clothing and hid the fact that I was a girl because I was ashamed of it. Even when I was little, my brothers got to go wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted, but I couldn't. When I asked my mother about it, she's like, well, because you're a girl. I didn't think that was fair. I hated it. I had no freedom because I was a girl. And so that caused me to develop just this disdain for other women. And it took me a long time to start to figure out how to deal with this, how to accept myself. I accepted myself because I had no choice, is how I felt. That, I don't look good in feminine clothing. I don't look good in makeup. I'm ugly. And that's how I felt for the majority of my life. So I just never tried. I never got hit on by anyone. I never got flirted with. And I always felt like it was because there was something wrong with me. And so part of my problem really was just that I thought I would be alone forever. And that's just how it was. And I accepted it. I didn't want to accept it, but that's how I viewed everything, was that this is how it's supposed to be, so there's no point in trying. And I dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety and PTSD. And it was a long time before anyone believed me that I needed help. And it took a long time for me to get the courage to ask for help, because I was raised to, deal with your own problems. That your problems are yours and you have to fix it yourself, and that you don't need help. If you need help, then you're not mature. So it took me a long time to realize that I did, in fact, need help and to ask for it. And it took a long time for the people around me to accept that I needed help and to give me the help that I needed. And when I was in middle school, I practically starved myself to be skinny, but I still didn't feel pretty because I didn't shower. I had terrible acne. My hair was always dirty and a mess. I always wore baggy clothing. I was so skinny you could see my ribs. Except that you couldn't because I was wearing baggy clothing, so it didn't matter. And then as I went into high school, my metabolism just absolutely crashed, and all the junk food I had been eating up to that point caught up with me, and I got very fat. And at that point, being as fat as I was, I gave up even more. And I didn't even have, by the time I dropped out of high school in the last year, I had no friends. I had no social life. I had, at best, 2 friends online. And that's all I had for years. Up until this point in my life, really. And only recently have I really managed to get my life together to a point where I can function like a normal human being for the first time. And there's so much in my life that I missed out on because I didn't think I was good enough. And because I didn't have the self-esteem or the confidence or anything like that to actually do the things that I wanted to do, I gave up. So when my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer, my life was just spiraling. I was somewhat better because I was on antidepressants, but I was still very much like reclusive, still hated women, still, just turned inwards at myself, hiding in my shell. And when my dad passed away, he took a large chunk of me with him because my dad was one of my best friends, and he was a large part of my life. And when he died, I felt really lost because my main support system was gone. He was the one that gave me confidence and, pushed me harder than anyone else to do things that I felt uncomfortable doing. But he meant well. He wanted to understand. He wanted to see me live a normal life, and he never got to. And it was a year I suffered after he passed. And I cried every night. It was almost on par with when I was in middle school. I felt lost, and I hated everyone. I hated myself. I wish I had died instead of my dad, because everyone loved my dad. My dad meant so much to a lot of people, but I meant nothing to everyone. And I couldn't stand it. But as 2024 came, things didn't really get much better. I watched my brother have a grand mal seizure. I watched my dog have a grand mal seizure on the day of my dad's funeral. And I continue to see her have seizures. She's 9 years old now, but she still has seizures. And we've done everything we can to help her. But it's just become a part of my life that she will die having a seizure. And I can only hope that she doesn't die like that alone. That someone is there with her so that she's not by herself when it happens. And not long after my dad died, just a few months, I went to a family reunion. I didn't want to go. It was the first one without my dad. But my older cousin was there. Not the one that assaulted me, but an older cousin that I was very close with and cared about a lot. And he comforted me when I was upset and crying by myself because I missed my dad. Not long after we got home from the family reunion, he died. And a week after his funeral, his wife died. It felt like everything was falling apart. That ever since my dad died, he took our happiness and our luck with him. Everyone in our family was suffering and dying and dealing with problems. My brother ended up getting back into alcoholism, and he was threatening me, he was threatening our mom. I was dealing with extreme panic attacks that put me in the hospital multiple times. I wanted to die. And I hadn't felt like that since I was 14. And I just thought nothing would ever get any better. But it did. It started to get better. Maybe I just started to accept that this was how life was now. Maybe I was just numb to it. And I can't tell you why I joined a dating site, because it was very out of character for me. But I joined one anyway, and I met a guy named Tyler on Bumble. Now, I'd never gone on a date before. We ended up going on 2 dates, but he was very flaky, he had poor communication skills, and eventually, I wanted to invite him to my brother's birthday, and then all of a sudden he was like, "Oh, I'm busy." And all of a sudden, I don't hear from him for like a month. So eventually I'm like messaging him like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm in vacation and I won't be back for a while." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then, he tells me when he'll be back. So I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll give him space and, let him do his thing." So the day kind of comes and goes that he's supposed to be back. So I text him, and he's like, "Oh, well, I met someone else while I was on vacation, and we hit it off. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news." And I'm not going to lie, I cried, because I did really like him. And it was the first time I felt that I liked someone. So, in a sense, we weren't dating, we were seeing each other. We had gone on a total of 2 dates. He kept asking to drive me home, and I wasn't comfortable with that. So, the fact that he essentially like found someone else, I think he was already seeing someone. And the whole story about him being cheated on by his fiance and stuff while he was overseas, whether that happened or not, I think he was trying to use it to get sympathy out of me and take advantage of me. And when he didn't get what he wanted from me, i.e. sex, he went and found someone else. So, I'm not gonna lie, I was upset about that, because I did genuinely like him. And being my first time experiencing any kind of relationship related interactions, I was pretty blind to a lot of the red flags. And, I had a cry, and then I moved on with my life, because I was expecting, to some degree, that the relationship wouldn't go any further, because it's my first interaction with someone, my first time having a relationship, and there is a higher chance that it would fail because of that. And as prepared as I was for it to not, I guess, work out, it still hurt the way that he told me he was essentially not interested anymore because he found someone else to fuck around with. But, and I went back on the dating site and I tried, but I couldn't find anyone that was even remotely like my type or that I was interested in. And I don't blame any of the guys that passed me by because I didn't feel self confident in myself at all. I wasn't as pretty as any of the other girls that were on there. I, compared myself to them a lot, feeling like, why would anyone go for me when they could go for the skinny, blonde, long haired, makeup wearing girl that likes going to the gym and hikes and road trips and likes to drink and smoke weed when I don't do any of that. I'm a homebody, I'm fat, I'm nerdy, I don't drink, I don't smoke weed, I can't drive. I don't like going on hikes, I don't like going to the gym. Why would anyone want to date me? I'm not attractive. But I tried anyway. And the dating site I was on before that I met Tyler on, it wasn't working for me. It just kept showing me guys who were looking for short-term relationships or hookups, or guys that were out of my age range, guys that all their pictures were like of them shirtless at the beach or at the gym, guys that wanted super active girlfriends, guys that liked drinking and all that stuff, and it wasn't for me. So I tried a different dating app, and it was a little bit of the same. I felt a little hopeless, honestly, because they kept showing me guys in their 50s, even though I set my age range to, 25 to 30. And they kept showing me guys that were like in other countries. And I was very close to giving up when I met my current boyfriend. It was on Halloween. My mom had taken a picture of me in my costume, and he had commented how cute I was in it. And to be fair, at first I wasn't going to swipe right on him because of his name. His name was the same as my cousin who sexually assaulted me when I was 8. But I ended up swiping right on him anyway because I realized how hypocritical it was to judge someone on their name, and that I need to leave it behind. It's something unfortunate that happened to me, and I was sick of it ruling my life. Sick of it being the reason I avoid certain people. And, at the time I just started to get over dealing with the fact that I was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism. And I was trying, new medication, and I was still kind of struggling when we started talking online. And the first times we were really talking to each other just about our interests, and we ended up spending the majority of the time just sending puns and dad jokes to each other. And eventually we decided to go on a date. And we went on a date to the museum, which was where he worked. And in hindsight, it was his day off, and yet he still agreed to go to the museum on the day off that he had. And I can only imagine how awkward it was for him, because a lot of the security guards there, were saying hi and being like, "Oh, you're back." And but it was an amazing date, and it was like my dream first date was to go to the museum, and because it is my favorite place in the entire world. And we talked for hours, and then we walked around and talked. He wanted to go get lunch, but I ended up turning that down. And then we talked some more, and we went on another date, and then another, and another. And on our third date, he came over to my place, and we held hands for the first time, and we kissed. And it was my first kiss, and it was incredible. And I asked him to be my boyfriend, and he said yes. And we've been dating ever since. And I spend a lot of time at his place. You know, having sex for the first time was an experience. I had to tell him that I am not a virgin. And it wasn't because of the assault that I experienced when I was 8, which I also told him about, and that my cousin had the same name as him. But, you know, I had taken my own virginity with sex toys, dildos, stuff like that, because I was sick of the stigma of being a virgin. And I wanted my first time with someone to be special and not painful. And it was special having my first time with him. He couldn't finish the first few times that we had sex because he wasn't used to wearing a condom, and it was very uncomfortable for him. Because he is quite large, and it's hard for him to find a condom that actually does fit. Like, he wears extra large, and it still is quite uncomfortable and tight for him. I started taking birth control, and, you know, we started doing, like, unprotected sex in the sense that he didn't have the condom on. And it felt better not just for me, because it felt far more good without it, but I was happy that he could feel good as well, because it's important to me that I can make him feel good when we're having sex, because it's not just about me, it's about him as well. And, you know, his pull-out game is very good. And, you know, the New Year's Eve, we were having some unprotected sex, and I feel very bad because he was extremely tired, and I felt like I had pressured him into having sex when he was tired, and I still feel very bad about that. We talked about it, and he said that he felt like he was obligated because it was New Year's Eve, and it's something that couples normally, you know, they normally get a little hanky-panky during, like, holidays. And that's also how I felt. And I apologized profusely because I really did feel like I pressured him to do it when he was tired and maybe didn't want to. But he ended up finishing inside me, and he hadn't pulled out because he was very tired and wasn't paying attention. And we immediately went to the pharmacy to get pregnancy tests and the Plan B. And luckily, you know, I did end up having my period, so wasn't pregnant, but we discussed, you know, what would happen if I ended up being pregnant. And, you know, just the fact that I can trust him and feel comfortable with him and safe in that aspect, that if a situation like that were to occur, I could trust him and rely on him that we would deal with the situation together. And I told him, like, the pregnancy isn't, you know, if it had happened, it's not just about me. It's about him as well, because it doesn't just affect my life, it affects his life. Neither of us are mature enough or financially stable enough to have a kid. And at that time, we'd only been dating for at least 3 months. And it's something that we didn't want to happen. So it's a good thing that it didn't happen and that I did in fact have my period. But being with him has made me so much happier. I have friends now. I'm friends with his roommate Day and his friend Josh, and I love hanging out with them. I get to do things that I normally would not have gotten to experience had I not met him. And it's just, I started to feel more confident in my femininity with him as well. I've started to wear eyeliner and, lipstick. I started to wear more pinks and pastel colors and floral things. I started to wear skirts and dresses, more feminine things because he thinks I'm pretty. He thinks I'm cute. And that makes me feel validated. I don't hate women anymore. I don't feel upset. I don't feel unattractive anymore because of him. He gave me the confidence that I needed to realize that I don't have to be skinny and wear lots of makeup to be pretty. And I don't have to feel like everyone needs to think that I'm pretty. The only person who thinks I'm pretty, that matters is him. And that's what femininity means to me, is that I want to be pretty for him, not for myself, not for anyone else, but for him. And while I know a lot of women are like, no, be pretty for yourself, I don't want to be pretty for myself because I don't care. What I care about is I care about him. And when he tells me that I'm pretty, that makes me feel good. I don't have to look at myself and be like, oh, I look pretty and feel good, because that's not how I view myself. But seeing myself through his eyes makes me feel better about myself, because it means that the person that I care about is attracted to me and thinks that I'm pretty. And that is what matters to me. And getting to spend so much time with him and be seen as a woman by the person that I love makes me more confident in myself. And I feel like I've finally got to a point in my life where I'm a human being. I get to live my life and be happy with the person that I love. And I want to be with him forever. And I hope he does too. But I suppose I will end my video here, because it's gone on for quite some time. And I suppose this is goodbye for now. I hope the next time I make an update, it'll be just as good. Bye.